On December 10th, 2024, Jennifer Sheffield sat behind the wheel of her car and talked to thousands of strangers on TikTok. She wasn't talking about a crime. She wasn't warning anyone that something was wrong. She was talking about divorce. Jennifer was 30 years old, and she was preparing to raise her daughters on her own. She was looking ahead to a new house, a new financial reality, and a life she had never lived before. And the strange thing about the video was how hopeful she sounded. She wasn't publicly attacking her husband. She wasn't describing him as dangerous. In fact, she said the opposite. Jennifer described Brandon as incredible throughout the divorce. She said they were working together. She said they were splitting everything down the middle. She said they were trying to keep the process civil for their children. She admitted she was scared, but the fear she was describing in that video was about money, mortgages, and the uncertainty of being on her own. She had no idea that 18 days later, she would be dead, and her husband would be dead beside her. What happened inside their Mississippi home on Toulon Street remains a tragedy with many unanswered questions. But the basic outline is known. Jennifer Sheffield was killed by gunshot. Her husband, Brandon Sheffield, also died from a gunshot wound. And according to Brandon Police Chief Joseph French, the evidence at the scene appeared to indicate that Brandon shot Jennifer before taking his own life. Police described it as an apparent murder-suicide. But the story of Jennifer Sheffield is bigger than the final minutes of her life. Because before she became the victim in a case that shocked her community, Jennifer was building something. She was building a future, and she thought she was getting close to it. Jennifer Marie Sheffield was born on September 9th, 1994. Her obituary described her as a daughter, wife, mother, friend, and follower of Christ. But the people who knew her remembered more than those titles. Her childhood friend Faye Lott described Jennifer as loving, caring, silly, devoted, and exceptionally selfless. The two had known each other since they were children. They rode horses together. They caught turtles in ponds. They did the ordinary things that children growing up in the country do. And then, as they got older, Jennifer changed. Lott described her as someone who blossomed into a beautiful young woman. But what stands out most in the accounts of Jennifer isn't simply how she looked. It was how hard she worked. Jennifer built a career in healthcare. She had earned a bachelor's degree in biochemistry and was pursuing a master's degree in medical sciences. At the time of her death, she was attending Mississippi College in the Master of Medical Sciences program. Her goal was to become a doctor. Her academic advisor, Dr. Stan Baldwin, remembered her as extremely bright and eager to learn. He described her kindness, generosity, and energy as qualities that would be deeply missed. Jennifer wasn't simply taking classes. She was working toward another version of her life, a future she apparently believed was beginning to take shape. And that future became especially important in late 2024, because Jennifer was also preparing to leave her marriage. Jennifer and Brandon Sheffield had recently decided to separate. According to Jennifer's friend Faye Lott, they had begun the divorce process. There is something important about that fact. There is no reliable public evidence establishing that Jennifer had publicly described Brandon as violent before her death. In fact, Lott told WLBT something that makes the case even harder to understand. She said Brandon had never been violent toward Jennifer in any way that she was aware of, and Lott had known them for years. She had been there when Jennifer and Brandon met. She had watched their relationship. She had loved Brandon for the way she believed he loved Jennifer. That made what happened almost impossible for her to comprehend. But there was something else. Jennifer herself had given the public a glimpse into the divorce. And looking back at that video after her death, the ordinary details became devastating. On December 10th, Jennifer posted a TikTok video. She was talking directly to her followers while driving. She told them she was about to become a single mom. She was in the middle of a divorce. But then she said something that would become haunting after her death.
My husband is being incredible, though. Like, really and truly, like, we're working together.
She described her husband as incredible.
Like, you know.
Jennifer said they were working together. She said everything was great. She said they were splitting everything down the middle. And she explained that the divorce was being handled with their daughters in mind. From the outside, at least from the version Jennifer chose to share publicly, this wasn't a war. It was a transition. She was preparing to move into a new house. She was preparing to live on one income. She was worried about the practical realities of starting over. A mortgage, a new home, a limited income, being responsible for herself. Jennifer admitted that she had never been on her own before. She asked her followers for advice about saving money and making money. She was planning. She was thinking about what came next. She sounded like someone standing at the edge of a completely new life. And then she said something else. She was scared, not necessarily of a person, of the future, of the uncertainty, of having to do something she had never done before. It was the morning of Saturday, December 28, 2024. 18 days after that TikTok video, Jennifer's family became concerned about her. The Sheffield home was in the 300 block of Toulon Street in Brandon, Mississippi. Family members went to the residence to conduct a welfare check. And when they arrived, they saw what police later described as obvious signs of foul play. They called authorities. At approximately 7:19 that morning, the Brandon Police Department received the call. Officers arrived. Inside the home, they found Jennifer Sheffield. They also found Brandon Sheffield. Both were dead. Jennifer was 30 years old. Brandon was 40. The scene immediately appeared to be something other than a simple, unexplained death. There were guns involved, and the circumstances pointed investigators toward a horrifying possibility: an apparent murder-suicide. Brandon Police Chief Joseph French said it appeared Brandon had shot Jennifer and then shot himself. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation was brought in to assist with processing the crime scene. And at that point, Jennifer's story became a police investigation. But there was no trial coming. No suspect to interrogate. No courtroom where a jury would eventually hear every piece of evidence. The man police believed had killed Jennifer was also dead. And that left the people who loved her trying to grasp something they might never fully understand. Why would a woman who was talking publicly about an apparently civil divorce end up dead just days later? Why would a man she had publicly described as incredible allegedly turn a gun on her? And what happened between December 10th and December 28th that nobody outside the home understood? Those are natural questions. But there is a danger in trying to answer them with information that simply isn't there. The available police reporting does not establish a detailed motive. It does not publicly establish that Brandon had been planning the killing. It does not establish a documented history of domestic violence. It does not give us a complete timeline of the final hours. And it does not give us a complete explanation of what happened inside the home. What it gives us is the outcome. Jennifer was dead. Brandon was dead. Police believed Brandon shot Jennifer and then himself. Her friends remembered her as devoted and selfless. Her obituary remembered her love for her family, her friends, her career, her faith, travel, and the people around her. And she was a mother. Her daughters Gracie and Kylie Sheffield are now growing up without their mother. That is the part of this story that can easily disappear beneath the shocking headline. Murder-suicide. 2 bodies. A suburban Mississippi home. A TikTok video that suddenly became disturbing in retrospect. But behind all of that was a 30-year-old woman who still had plans. Jennifer wanted to become a doctor. She wanted to raise her children. She wanted a home of her own. She was trying to figure out how to make a single income work. She was asking strangers for financial advice because she was stepping into a life she had never experienced before. She was scared, but she was moving forward anyway. There is something uniquely unsettling about Jennifer's December 10th video. When she recorded it, it was simply a woman talking about divorce. There was nothing obviously ominous about it. She wasn't making a final statement. She wasn't saying goodbye. She wasn't telling the world she was in danger. She was doing something much more ordinary. She was asking people who had already lived through being on their own for advice. How do you save money? How do you start over? Those were the questions Jennifer thought she needed answered. And that is why the video became so difficult to watch after December 28th. Because Jennifer was talking about the future in a way that assumed the future would actually arrive. She was planning for a life that, 18 days later, she would never get to live. After Jennifer's death, Faylott tried to describe the woman she had known since childhood. She didn't begin with the crime. She talked about Jennifer, the friend who grew into a woman everyone was proud of. Lott called Jennifer one of the most amazing people she had ever known. And then came the part that revealed how little sense the alleged killing made to the people around them. Lott said she had never known Brandon to be violent. She had been there when the couple met. She had watched the relationship. She had believed he loved Jennifer. And now she was left trying to reconcile the man she thought she knew with what police believed had happened inside that house. There is no easy answer to that. People can hide things. People can change. Relationships can look very different from the outside than they do inside. But we should not turn that uncertainty into facts that investigators have not established. The honest conclusion is simpler. Jennifer's death was shocking. It was unexpected to the people who knew her. And the public record leaves major questions unanswered. In many murder cases, the investigation eventually produces an arrest. There is a suspect. There are interviews. There are search warrants. There are forensic examinations. Then comes a courtroom. A prosecutor builds a timeline. A defense attorney challenges it. Witnesses testify. Evidence is presented. And eventually, the jury decide what they believe happened. Jennifer's case doesn't have that ending. The person police identified as the apparent shooter was also found dead. That means there will be no trial in which Brandon Sheffield explains what happened. There will be no cross-examination. There will be no jury verdict. There will be no sentencing hearing where Jennifer's family gets to speak directly about what her death cost them. Instead, there is a crime scene. There are police statements. There are grieving family members. There are photographs and memories. And there is a woman whose life was supposed to continue. And the last public glimpse we have of her shows someone trying to move forward. That matters. Because when a woman dies at the hands of someone she once trusted, the final act can become so overwhelming that everything before it gets erased. Jennifer deserves the opposite. Her death should be remembered. But so should her life. She believed there was a next chapter. And 18 days later, there wasn't. The Sheffield case leaves questions that the public may never be able to answer completely. What happened inside that house? What changed during those final weeks? What was happening privately during the divorce? Was there anything Jennifer's friends didn't know? Was there anything investigators hadn't yet made public? And most importantly, what was happening in Brandon's mind? We should resist the temptation to answer those questions ourselves. The available public reporting doesn't establish those answers. What it does establish is enough. On December 28, 2024, family members went to Jennifer's home for a welfare check. They found signs of foul play. Police arrived at approximately 7:19 a.m. Jennifer Sheffield and Brandon Sheffield were found dead. Chief Joseph French said it appeared Brandon had shot Jennifer before killing himself. The Mississippi Bureau of Investigation assisted with processing the scene, and the case was treated as an apparent murder-suicide. That is what the evidence publicly available to us supports. Everything else belongs in the category of unanswered questions. On January 5, 2025, Jennifer's family and friends gathered at Odd and Lee Funeral Home in Brandon to remember her. There was a visitation from noon until 3:30 in the afternoon, followed by a memorial service. Jennifer's obituary described her as a devoted daughter, mother, friend, and follower of Christ. It remembered her love of her children, her family, her friends, her faith, and the career she had worked so hard to build. She was survived by her parents, Eileen and Gilbert Murillo, her younger brother Austin, and her two daughters, Gracie and Kylie. And that is where the story of Jennifer Sheffield comes back to the two little girls she left behind. Everything she had been building, her education, her career, her plans for a new home, and most importantly, her life with her daughters, ended in a matter of minutes. But the life she lived before that morning was much bigger than the circumstances of her death. Jennifer's next chapter was supposed to be difficult. She knew that. She said so herself. She was worried about money. She was worried about buying a house. She was worried about becoming financially independent. She admitted she'd never been on her own before. But difficulty isn't the same thing as defeat. She was 30 years old. She had already built an impressive academic career. She was pursuing medicine. She had children who needed her. She had friends who loved her. She had a family. She had people who believed in her. And she was moving forward. That's how Jennifer Sheffield should be remembered. Not only as the woman whose husband allegedly killed her, but as the woman who was trying to build something of her own. A woman who had goals. A woman who was still learning. A woman who had a future she believed was waiting for her. There is something especially painful about Jennifer's story because the final public version of her life wasn't a goodbye. It was a beginning. She was talking about the future. She thought she had time. She didn't. On December 28th, Jennifer Sheffield's life ended inside her home. Jennifer and Brandon didn't leave behind an empty house. They left behind two daughters. Gracie and Kylie had lost both of their parents. And in the days that followed, Brandon's older brother, Brian Sheffield, stepped forward to help care for what was left behind. He created a fundraiser for his nieces, writing that there was no handbook for navigating a tragedy like this, but that the family's priority was making sure the girls had the financial and emotional support they needed to heal. Jennifer's obituary made the same priority clear. In lieu of flowers, people were asked to consider helping support Kylie and Gracie. Two little girls had lost their mother. They had lost their father, too. And while the adults tried to make sense of what had happened, the girls were the ones who would have to grow up carrying it. If you found this story touching, please consider sharing it with someone else. And if you haven't already, subscribe. It helps us continue telling the stories that deserve to be remembered, not for the crimes that ended them, but for the lives that came before. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time.